Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join and we'll begin. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Jess Norman, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our briefing this afternoon, which is being delivered by the Innovation Group. Before handing over to our presenters, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping points. I need to advise you that the session is being recorded. Please ensure your microphone and camera are turned off. If you would like to ask a question, please use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Your questions will be answered during the Q&A session and will remain anonymous. However, if we do not have time to answer these, they may be addressed post-event should you provide your contact details. The MGAA's Programme of Learning and Insights has been accredited by the Chartered Institute for the Quality of Content and Supporting Materials, with CPD hours available if relevant to your ongoing professional development. The recording of this briefing will be available on our website and MGAA YouTube channel, with the PowerPoint presentation to follow post-event. Finally, I'll be posting a link to a feedback survey in the chat box. Please do take the time to complete this, which should take no more than 2 minutes, as this allows us to deliver the best quality events to our members. So today's briefing, The Importance of Third-Party Intervention, is being delivered by Gary DeGroot, Chloe Gunn and James Gatty. So that's it from me now. Gary, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon to you joining us. So we'll just kick off with the objectives of today's session, which is on motor third-party intervention. So we're going to summarise why we think it's important and potentially undervalued in terms of the way that MGAs assess claim spend and overall supplier performance. We're going to outline some of the processes that are involved. We're going to explain the impact on claims costs. These are reasonably profound, and I don't think people quite realise the cost differential between getting this right and getting it wrong. And we're going to explain how streamlined process enhances the overall outcome of a claim for you guys too. So if we just move on quickly to introductions from the teams here. So I'll go first. I am Gary DeGroot. I'm the Growth Director at Innovation Group. I've been here for 5 years and I run our sales, marketing and account management teams across both motor and property. I've been in the industry now for about 15, 16 years, always in claims-related roles and very much focused on motor historically, and very good to be presenting to you all today. Chloe.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chloe Gunn. I am Head of Growth for our motor business. So my role covers managing our existing client portfolio and relationships, as well as new business. Prior to that, I had a number of insurance motor-related roles, particularly mainly in operations, where I held operations manager for Zurich Personal Lines, motor and home claims. So thank you very much for having me here today. James?
James Gatty, Commercial Director. I've worked in claims outsourcing for 30 years, running supply chains, client services, product design and commercial. My focus now is on business and client profitability and using technology to optimize services for the customer and automating process to drive down handling time and costs.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right, let's skip into it, guys. So the importance of third-party intervention. So yeah, we're going to go through, we've got some slides to go through today. It's reasonably informal, so we're going to have a chat as we go through. We've got 3 people here that deal with intervention very regularly as part of their day job. We've got different views on certain things, which I want us to air out and discuss with you guys. But ultimately, I think the key for today is to get everyone thinking about why this is such an important topic and the value that it holds as well. So I think, look, as a starting point, you know, MGAs, insurers, whoever it may be, when we consider overall cost spend, I think there's probably more of a focus on certain other elements of the claim journey rather than looking at third-party intervention. So certainly for the clients that we deal with, we have a huge amount of focus on AD repair management. So what are we spending on repairing vehicles that we look after. I know, and certainly if you join a lot of the MGAA webinars, you'll see a lot about personal injury, a lot about credit hire defence. I'm sure there's been recent ones on Ogden rate. We have stuff on fraud, all really, really important elements in terms of controlling your overall cost. But for me, where I think you can find the greatest delta in terms of savings against performance and non-performance, I think you need to be focusing on third-party intervention. So to try to contextualize that a little bit more, we just want to go through some numbers with you guys. I guess the biggest question here is, what is the dividend of successful third-party capture? So we've taken some data that we've got on screen here. This is all sort of very publicly available information. So the average credit hire cost now, which is we've taken from an article supplied to the Insurance Times by a leading legal provider within the UK, is running at about £4,000. Now, you might have some variations to that. That's the market average that we're looking at. And certainly from the data that we hold internally, we know that the cost of repairing a vehicle through our network is about £1,000 lower than it is to either allow it to go through a credit hire model or potentially we call it now a Coles-Heatherton model of subrogated recovery instead. So the delta that you're looking at just on those two elements, hire and repair, is about £5,000. Now, there is some tangential evidence also to suggest that the likelihood of receiving a PI claim is slightly lower if we were to capture a third party, but we've not factored that into any of our financial analysis here. So effectively, I guess what we're saying here, guys, is that the difference between successful capture and non-capture is going to cost you about £5,000 every single time. And to contextualize again just how much this can mean for you, you know, we did some modeling just in advance of this. So if you were a motor MGA that had, say, 10,000 FNOLs per annum, a percentage of that, let's say 30% are going to be windscreen for information only, and we've assumed a fault ratio of about 65% there, which I think for most broker-led books would be accurate. So you'd be looking at about 4,500 fault claims per annum. For every 1% that the supplier is able to impact your capture percentages, you'd be saving about 225,000 per annum. So you can see the significance there, and that's just 1%. You know, I think from our perspective, and certainly the historical stuff that we've seen, James, Chloe can attest to this, you know, we've seen changes of 4, 5, 6, even 8% in one case from poor performance to good performance, which can be saving you millions of pounds. So I think for you guys, you know, whoever's looking after your claims, whether it's internal, external, you're pushing it all through a single TPA, you have a specialist provider, you know, really focusing on that element of what you're doing there, making sure that the data that you've got is verified, the exclusions are correct there is important, because the cost savings here are absolutely substantial. And I know, James, for you, there's not many bigger areas that you can save money as an MGA or an insurer than focusing on important third-party intervention.
Yeah, I mean, it's often overlooked, and I suppose to give a bit of colour to some of those numbers. As a business, we've been doing TP intervention for over 25 years, effectively ever since it became clear that credit hire fueled by legal precedent was here to stay. You know, much so people didn't like it when it first turned up. Enough legal precedent to ensure that it was here for the duration. So unlike 25 years ago, it's no longer just a possibility that a non-fault third party will end up in credit hire and some form of repair. It's an absolute racing certainty. So, you know, it's now more important than ever for you to deploy an antidote to credit services and inbound subro claims, because, as Gary's just explained, it's going to cost you more. Now, your experience of those costs might differ, but it will cost you more to allow things to just run as they are. I've heard a lot of guff talked about TP Pro over the years, and I'm often quite dismayed and sometimes quite delighted in a sales environment to encounter deployed services that are really rigid and effectively repurposed AD claims processes. You know, clearly they're deployed with the intention of saving money, and that's obviously a principal strategic aim of doing something like this. But the point is that you still have a lot of work to do before you have a right to those savings. You need to consider who you're up against and what they themselves are offering. You know, your offer here competes directly with a credit hire company's offer. and if your offer is not at least as good in terms of value or service, you have no real right to expect that the TP will allow you to put their interests second to your own. I was thinking about it this morning, just before my computer crashed and I lost all my notes. I often think about the old motor racing maxim, to finish first you must finish. I was just to translate that into the motor claims world, it would sound something like, to secure your savings first you must capture. So I think you should, go into this, you should, and I take this through the presentation today, you should make a full, open and inclusive offer for the third party to embrace. You should make it easy for them to engage with you and say yes. And once they've agreed to the services, you then move heaven and earth to ensure that you deliver on your promises. Those are the sort of principles that we adhere to as a business. They work in an environment of TP handling in a way perhaps that you wouldn't find so palatable in AD claims, but I'm here to tell you that they work.
Absolutely. So I think that, James, that's really useful. And I think, guys, hopefully for those listening, that number, that £5,000, a failed capture can cost you £5,000. And I don't think that you would allow this level of leakage in other areas. But for capture, I think we see everything as an upside, and it absolutely is, because it's all savings ultimately. But there should be a determination to continue to get better within this area and make sure that you're maximising your dividends and potentials out of that. So, James, I think your chat there took us nicely onto the next slide, if you can, Chloe, which is capture. So, there are a lot of elements that go into successful capture performance, which we're going to come on to as we go through effectively the process cycle. But the most important is to actually capture the third party in the first place. Downward cost control, good data management, COPLI requirements, all of that is secondary to the fact that you've got to proactively contact the customer and be able ultimately to sell the services that you've got. You have to remember here as well that the people that we're either picking up the phone to or corresponding to in different ways via technology, these people have read a lot about ambulance chasers and scammers around insurance within mainstream media and press. We're phoning them or contacting them pretty cold, offering services out for an accident that they've been involved in, and we are not representing their insurer. So having the appropriate level of language and empathy and explanation for the situation that they're in is absolutely paramount to getting that third party comfortable with the services that we're looking to provide. So there's a few points on here which I won't read because you guys can do that in your own time. I think, Chloe, I'll come to you. What do you think is probably the most important thing to make sure that we're maximising capture wherever possible?
Thanks, Gary. I think for me, one of the most important things that's probably overlooked within the capture process is the high quality of your F&O team and the performance within there. So your F&O team can ultimately navigate exactly the outcome of the claim. So whether you're going to go down the third-party capture route. More often than not, being able to ask the right questions, have the right technology in place to facilitate the data set, the questions that need to be asked, and obtaining the correct information at the front end, I think is highly important. I think so often you find that new recruits are potentially placed into F&O as a starting point, as the start of their learning journey, which obviously you understand, as everyone's got to start somewhere. But I think you've got to make sure that you've got the right controls in place, the right checkpoints, the right training to ensure that, it's such an important part of this capture journey. Without that level of information, without the right liability decision making at the offset, without the contact details, you're already on the back foot. It's a detriment to the overall outcome of the claim. So I think for me, one of the most important things is really how successful and how quality your F&O performance or provider is.
No, it's a really good point, Chloe, because for us as an outsourced intervention provider, sometimes we're doing the FNOL, but sometimes we're not. So we're reliant on an insurer's FNOL team to be able to let us know whether there's an opportunity there. And we can capture 100% of the opportunities that we get. But there's a saying, isn't there? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. There's a sports saying, I think. So we need to have more filtering through that. And I think also that lends on to another point around speed in the process here as well. So we've got a couple of bits down there. Yeah, if you go back 10 years in this sort of area, guys, what you'd be looking at is most suppliers would have a 1 hour or a 30-minute SLA to contact the third party in terms of instruction. Speed is king here because effectively we're competing with a CHO to be able to get to that third party first. If you're there first, you've got a really good chance of securing the services that you want. But there are a few elements that go into that. Firstly, those old-fashioned SLAs are pretty much dead now because of the technology that's been invented. We certainly have a chatbot or a virtual assistant that automates a lot of the communication with a third party. So we're not talking about a 30-minute or an hour SLA where we've got the details. We're talking about a matter of seconds. So we remove that down. But there's a stage prior to us receiving the claim around timeliness that's really important as well. And for a lot of the guys on this call that are dealing with brokers, I think there's a massive educational piece for your brokers about the importance of speedy FNOL and reporting in. Because if you are taking time, this, again, if you're managing fleets, educating them on the speed of FNOL, even your personal lines customers as well, why quick FNOL is important to you, your brokers filtering that over, the quicker that a supplier such as us can get third-party opportunities, the more successful that we're going to be in securing them. So speed is a key element here. It's key from an FNOL perspective. It's key in terms of any data transfer that we get from a broker, from another supplier providing FNOL. And it's key for us in terms of contacting and discussing with third parties as well. Absolutely paramount to the process. James, your thoughts on making sure that we secure capture?
I agree with you entirely in terms of speed. I mean, there are things that we can do as a supplier to speed up the process. We can knock out admin handling. We can use APIs to connect with our clients so that new claims are automatically transmitted to us and ingested into the process. If you join up with the virtual assistant chatbot, feasibly, from the moment that the FNOL button is clicked at the in the call center through to the third party receiving the chatbot invitation could be seconds. You ally that to our preoccupation with rapid outbound. We're calling customers on average within 15 minutes of receipt of the notification. So we're only giving the chatbot itself 15 minutes to work. I'll talk a bit about the success of the chatbot later on, but enough people pick up on that chatbot before we even call them that they're self-serving. So, speed is vital. There are so many interested parties. The key to all of this is you want to get to them before you want to get to these third parties before they speak to their own broker or insurer, because if you don't beat that to the punch, then they're already in hire, and that hire is going to be a heck of a lot more expensive. There are ways of of heading them off at the pass, but it becomes more difficult. Having said that, we do chase third parties to the ends of the earth. We will pick up a conversion opportunity that is 10 days old if it's taken 10 days to get to us, and we do have a degree of success with those. So it is worth pursuing all of them and checking that they're not in service, or that they're happy with the service that they've been provided with, and often they're not. So then they're not a busted flush. But if you want to maximise the opportunity, you'd be well advised to get to them early.
Once you've got them though, James, and I think, obviously speed to get to be able to enable you to contact them is key. But certainly once you've got them on the phone, one of the things that I think we found, really useful is an incentive scheme, and having our sales agents. I think it's very different. So intervention and third-party capture is very different to claims handling per se. so I think you've got different pools of people, you've got different skill sets that are required. So you've got having a group of sales agents who are able to have a successful conversation with a third party, be able to articulate exactly what it is, who they are, what you can do for them to enable them to make those decisions. But having a sales team that are also hugely focused on getting the right results, are outcome driven, have set incentives, understand what it is the right outcome for both the third party and the client, ensure that we're managing the third party intervention for. Being able to have those conversations by those trained and experienced operatives, makes a huge difference. It's
I think you're right on the money, Chloe. Anybody who spoke to me about TP Pro before would have heard me say third parties aren't customers until they say yes. So if you try to run TP capture as an admin process, you will not do it very well. It is manifestly a sales process, and salespeople respond to clear and trackable incentives. If you incentivize them properly, they will sell. If you monitor them properly, they will sell the right things.
Yeah, and I think, Chloe, that's a fantastic point. And I think just to touch on that, so about 85 to 90% of the captures that we make as a business, the third party doesn't initially say yes. So there's either some form of hesitation or they say no. So we've put down there overcoming objections, and Chloe talked about sales trained individuals. But again, people are not familiar with what we're doing and what our part is in the process. So us trying to educate them on how we're trying to control cost, we want to give them the right service, protect their no claims bonus, absolutely vital to getting that from a position of, I'm not sure what your intention is here, to, okay, I'm willing to use you guys for services from here on out. I think it's a cracking point. Okay, if we skip to the next slide, Chloe, please. Thank you. So, right, we always say capture is the most important thing. I don't think we would disagree with that. We never change that. But one thing I don't think that insurers or MGAs are very good at in terms of managing their supply chain is downstream cost control once capture has been achieved. So look, the $5,000 delta is there. That's fantastic. We all want to save that. But that $5,000 can turn into a $4,000 saving pretty quickly if you've not got downstream cost control managed appropriately. And actually, for us, and there's no sales pitch on this today, this is educational, but we're not incentivized necessarily to do anything that's going to cost your claim more. And that's really, really important when thinking about who your supplier is. How do they derive their revenue from? And is that derivation of revenue counterproductive to you trying to control the claims cost here? And so when we talk about this, we've got a list of things here that are really important to cost control. I'm going to pick on one and then I'll go around to the guys for something else. The variance between repairing a vehicle through our own approved network or letting it go to a non-network repairer is about £400 or £500. There's a significant variance between the two fees there. And so again, for your supplier, you want them to be pushing as much through their repair network as is possible. You don't want to lose the capture opportunity on the basis of trying to push it down a route that they're not comfortable with, but how you sell the values of your repair service in terms of speed, customer service, parts availability, all of those sorts of things that would be important to AD repair is equally vital to a third party as well. So that's one really key way of making sure that you're maximising cost control from a downstream perspective once you've achieved capture. Chloe, do you want to talk about courtesy car versus hire?
Yeah, sure. So, intervention isn't just about providing a hire vehicle at a cheaper rate, which I think perhaps in the past it has been. It's about being able to assess the needs of the individual, assess the claim, assess the third party's needs, and understand what is the right outcome, how you can get the claim in the best possible footing. So, Gary, you alluded to, repair network penetration saves on repair costs, but not only that, being able to utilise our repair network and putting, 70-80% of repairs through that process also means that we have the ability to be able to convert and have conversations with third parties where it's appropriate, with providing a courtesy car as a replacement for mobility. So rather than just issuing a direct hire vehicle and providing just a replacement intervention, our handlers will have it's important to have an ongoing conversation around what it is what you're up to next week. You're going on holiday? Oh no, I'm working from home all week. Oh, okay, right. So you can have a conversation. How often we'll be using a car? If someone has got a fairly small car, a courtesy car might just be an appropriate source of mobility, and it's much cheaper than obviously. So by doing that and having those conversations, not only are you putting the repair through your network and saving money on the average repair cost, you are able then to potentially look to save on direct hire costs as well, which, when you're looking at the sort of global cost of a claim, not only is it the capture the important piece, but how you control those the spend down the line.
Yeah, and thanks, Chloe. And I think it's important to note for us, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but a courtesy car is free. So there is no cost to an insurer of provision of a courtesy car. So the more that we can place into that and not hire a vehicle, there's a direct saving for you guys. I think just on that saving piece as well, one of the things that it's not, a lot of people are doing this is we call it a cash for hire process. So, if we've got a significant hire bill likely for rental of a car, let's say it's a reasonably prestige vehicle, that might end up being a pretty significant number. Could be $2,000, say, as an example. If you were a third party, would you rather have an equivalent car available to you for the period of repair? That might be 2 weeks, might be 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. Or would you rather have 1,500 quid in your pocket? And what we tend to find is when some cash is offered to be able to put into people's bank, they soon realise that they've got another vehicle available, either a child's car or a partner's car that they're able to use for that intervening period, to be able to bank that money. And so again, you look at that, it might be that we were looking at a £2,000 hire bill, but instead we'll be able to offer £1,500 to the third party, again, making a direct saving against what that cost would have been. And it's all things like that that are really important to make sure that you've got the capture, but you're controlling the cost as well. James, I want to come to you. So, where we do have to hire a vehicle as well, the speed of repair is very, very important in terms of controlling those hire periods as well, right? And that's a big factor for us in terms of how we manage our repair network and our internal people.
I mean, it's really important across the piece. I suppose just picking up on the previous point about hire and courtesy car and cash for cars and all that sort of stuff. Competing TP capture services tend to be very hire centric, either because people think that's what they're up against, which they are, in fairness, or because the intervention services are actually provided by a hire company themselves, and you can't really blame them. Their motivation will be to hire vehicles. We think this is a missed opportunity, really. A lot of people won't need or want, like Chloe said, a like-for-like vehicle. They might not even need a car at all. But that, or the implicit bargain, though, if you're not offering, or the customer's not accepting an expensive hire car, is that you're going to repair their car rapidly, or you're going to attend to their claim rapidly. And I suppose there are two parts to that. The first is a fast track total loss type process, which means actually once you've decided something's a total, or once you've validated the damage to the vehicle, you make a rapid decision as to whether to repair it or to total loss it. If you run a fast track process, you should really be looking to cash out a customer within 24 hours, Chloe?
Yeah.
If you can do that, you can absolutely strip out potential hire costs. You can take somebody out of a hire within 7 days or maybe sooner of placing them in funds. But in other words, if you're going to repair it quickly. If you're going to total loss it, cash them out quickly. If you look at the repair side, We call this progression. Other people call it all sorts of, repair management, whatever you want to call it. But it is the glue that binds the rest of the process together. It's no good chucking loads of TP captures into a bucket and hoping that they're going to come out all right. In fairness, some of them will. There are lots of really good repairers who will endeavour to do things, properly and quickly and by the book. But the fact is, even in a really well managed network, some of them won't go well, and that's really where progression comes in, because it should really be there to monitor throughput via each of the repairers. It should ensure that any claim that's not going according to plan or to timescales is directly intervened in by a human, and then remedied, because you've made some promises to your third party. You may even have convinced them to take the bus, although that's a pretty vanishingly small number. But like I said before, if you don't then uphold your promise and get it repaired, quickly or reasonably quickly to their satisfaction, then they'll be knocking on your door and asking for a hire car. I suppose the other benefit of progression is that it produces a heck of a lot of data, and that allows you to measure the comparative performance of your repairers, identify those with the best outcomes, and potentially favour those suppliers with more valuable work. It also means that you can weed out the ones who aren't performing so well. So it's a very virtuous circle, the whole progression piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good summary, James. And just to finish on this slide, obviously we've got a lot of pieces on there with some IG and acronyms as well. So, key to key time, if your supplier has a 10% increase, if their key to key time is 10% over what another supplier can produce or a market average, you're paying 10% more effectively on your hire costs where you do hire that. So important to know. Similarly with engineering, if you've got delays there to authorization processes, that's going to add on additional costs to your hire costs where you do need to do so. So all of this stuff's absolutely vital to make sure you're managing it and controlling it in the right way and keeping costs down wherever possible. Okay, we move along. Okay, customer journey. So, we wanted to put this on there because, I think from an insurer's perspective, are these guys our customers or not? It's a very fair question. They're not policy holders, that's for sure, but you're certainly offering a service. And we wanted to talk about this and talk about why we think it's important on the basis that, okay, you've captured a third party, you've done the process, and you've convinced them that they should be taking repair and hire solutions or mobility solutions through us. Don't think that the battle is at that point won, because their own insurer and their partners from a supply chain perspective, normally CHOs, will be encouraging them to leave the capture process that we agreed, flip over to their own provision of services as well. And if we aren't able to offer a journey, and James just alluded to this, if we aren't able to offer a journey that makes them comfortable that we're going to repair their vehicle in a timely fashion, that we update them at salient points during that repair process, that we can provide them with mobility as we've outlined within the initial call, and that ultimately we're going to drive that repair process through to conclusion, they will flip out of that and go into somewhere else. And this is a really important part, because there's nothing more frustrating, certainly from our side, than thinking that you've got a capture of a third party but losing that third party to another provider. So this is hugely important. So we'd encourage everyone to think of these as customers, because the savings for you guys, again, are great. You don't want to lose them after that initial capture is done. Chloe, anything to add on that?
Well, the regulatory sort of landscape is changing, and I think once you've captured a third party, they are sort of seen really now as your customer, so they shouldn't really be treated any differently, I don't think, to any sort of AD, a customer in the AD process. But keeping them engaged throughout the process. We've talked about how you can successfully capture and some of the cost implications of doing it well and not doing it well. But if they leak out of the process, that is a lost opportunity. I think being able, we're in a period of time where things have changed, technologically evolved over the years. Providing a communication strategy to your customers, to your third parties that fit the needs of that particular individual. Some people still want to pick up the phone and have that conversation. Some people still want to have their sort of hand held through the process. I mean, those of you who deal with claims on a daily basis, I think we can sometimes become a little bit immune to, it can be quite a distressing time. But conversely, there are also other people who don't actually want to have a conversation with you. They don't want to pick up the phone and waste their time. They're working, they're behind a screen, they've got their phone, they want to be able to digitally get updates through, whether that's through text message, through repair tracking portals, push notifications direct into wallets. There are people who, quite don't want to, they don't really be bothered by you. Just send me what I need to know. And equally important, do send me what I need to know so that I am engaged and I do understand what's going on. Just because I don't want to speak to you doesn't mean that I don't want to understand. So, there is a fine balance for sure.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Chloe. Again, so I think that the learning here and the message here is, don't think because you've captured a third party that the battle is won. There is still a competition going on, and actually the way that you treat that third party, or we'll call them customer at that stage, the updates that you provide them with, the repair progression that James spoke about to make sure that it's moving quickly through the process, the way that you update them either technologically or over the phone, whichever their preference is very, very important to make sure that you're not losing those captures out of your process. No one wants leakage in this area. It's massively important that we get it right. Okay, moving on, please. Court compliance. Chloe, over to you.
Okay, so court compliance. So we've talked about kind of the happy path, once you've successfully intervened, how you keep the customer or the third party engaged in the process, what you can do to deliver the right outcome. But obviously not in every intervention opportunity is a successful one. So, in fact, probably sometimes as many as 1 in 2 opportunities that you may get won't be successful for whatever reason. So you need to be able to have a backup plan, really. For anyone that isn't aware, simply put, you need to be able to have a compliant COPLI letter, as they're called. Any third party has been involved in an accident and is looking to make a claim for the damages that have been caused, they have a duty to mitigate their losses. So they must take reasonable steps to be able to minimise the claims cost and not allow it to sort of escalate out of control. So if you've made an intervention offer which has been refused for whatever reason, or you have been unsuccessful in being able to contact them, which happens quite a lot, this is where your COPLI communication comes into play. So firstly, in order for it to be compliant, you must include the rates that are involved. So obviously we're talking here direct hire versus sort of credit hire rates, direct hire and intervention hire rates being much cheaper in terms of the overall outcome of the claim. So in order for the third party to be able to make an informed decision and understand exactly what costs are involved, they may be offered a free vehicle from their insurer, they may be offered a free vehicle from the third party intervention provider, but ultimately there is a cost involved to it. So that needs to be included so they can make their own comparison. So once they've done that and you've got your compliant documentation, you need to be able to send these communications out, and typically they have been sent in the past traditional method by recorded delivery through the traditional post method. Now, I think that obviously comes with its own challenges, because how often at the scene of an accident are your address details exchanged? More often than not, probably a name and a telephone number, and perhaps a reg if you're lucky. Just being able to obtain all of the information and a third-party contact address is sometimes been a difficult challenge to overcome. So being able to develop a digital COPLI solution will certainly give you sort of additional protection around those cases where you haven't been successful. So being able to deliver a text message which has got a link to a COPLI communication, with analytics off the back end that can really help you succeed in arguments potentially down the line. It's very similar to the kind of the blue ticks on WhatsApp. So you've delivered, the message has been delivered, but then you also know when it's been read and received. So, those being able to supply that kind of enhanced reporting with read receipts is definitely another successful sort of tactic in being able to manage costs when things don't necessarily go the way you'd hoped.
Yeah, I think this is hugely important. We try to capture everything, guys, as you can imagine, but we're not 100% successful. There are occasions when we fail to do so. Anyone third-party claims team will be aware of the importance of Copley communication, and the world's moved on. Doing this in paper format is just not really a 2025 piece anymore, so you need some form of digital solution around that. And as Chloe said, massively important is the read receipts that we get back from that too, so we're able to provide to our insurer partners bona fide details of who has opened what and who has read what, and that's invaluable for their third-party defence teams to be able to respond to any subsequent credit hire bills. James, I know you've obviously been involved in the architecture behind the technology now, a really important move away from the old-fashioned paper way of doing this to the technology that we're using now, right?
People expect to be communicated with electronically. That's the first thing, and secondly, sending everything by recorded delivery was not a very sustainable way of operating. It's incredibly expensive and quite slow. So the ability to dash off.
Not very green as well, by the way.
I use the word sustainability in its broadest possible term.
Yeah.
So actually, being able to immediately push out a structured Copley communication and have court admissible evidence of transmission, receipt and opening is really, really important. Apart from anything else, it's a real drag going back to the post office and pulling back the data that you need to support it. So it's just another it's another weapon in our armory, isn't it, really? And if you're not doing it, there are plenty of providers who are offering this service, including us.
Absolutely. Right, Chloe, if you skip along. Guys, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left before we wrap up. If there are any questions, then please feel free to pop them in the chat. We're more than happy to take any questions on this subject. And if there's anything that we can't answer here, we'll take it away, of course. So please feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, so we're going to move along to data now as well. So it doesn't really matter what area of claims management that you're looking at, data is king, of course, as well. So I think for me personally, I come from a data background. It's the first job I ever had in insurance, was running some data reporting. So it's always been a key thing for me. James is hugely involved there, as is Chloe within our business. We're really big on data. And I think, we've talked a lot about the metrics that we consider to be important in terms of quantifying success in third-party intervention. You've got to have accurate, live, granular data of performance. And I think if I go back to that first slide where we said that, if you had 4,500 full claims per year, a 1% change in capture rates can equate to a £225,000 saving over the course of the year. What you absolutely don't want is for your supplier in March to drop their overall capture rate by 5%, because that would mean that's costing you just over £100,000 for that month on those associated volumes, just for a single month. But you won't know about that necessarily until the end of the month if you've got access to live, accurate data to be able to see where performance is sitting at. So, our view on this is reasonably simple. If you're looking at your data only monthly, you are 4 weeks behind where you need to be looking at it, because any downturn in performance is not going to be noticeable, and that is going to be costing you guys a hell of a lot of money. James, you love your data, you love your portals, you've helped to create our client portal. So this isn't a sales pitch, but we have a live client portal that we've built out recently to be able to access. How important is access to data and information for insurers and MGAs within this area?
Oh, it's the lifeblood of this process and so many others in insurance and insurance claims. It's most elemental level. It provides an insight into what is and what isn't working against your benchmarking and your expectations. It allows you to measure here the success of your sales process. It allows you to monitor your callbacks and your commitments to your customers. It tells you how the processes are working. As an outsourcing business ourselves, it's also vital that we can demonstrate to our own customers and to the third parties going through the process that we know where each of our claims is at. That's a really important tell. I suppose, it does also other things. It allows you to incentivize your sales team. We talked about the importance of having a sales-focused team. Now, if you can't monitor their individual contribution, how do you expect to be able to motivate them via an incentive program? And how do you ensure that they exhibit the right behaviours? It's all it's very easy to chuck in a ill-considered incentive plan and get people selling the wrong stuff. And here that's particularly important. I guess also looking at it in the round, I know the way people view third parties now is slightly different, but ultimately third party capture is not regulated in the way that an AD claim is. So our approach to TP intervention can be quite flexible. I guess in other words, you can try things in a way that you can't simply have a go at them in AD claims. And if they work, you can adopt them. If they don't work, you can just go and try something else. So data is really key to informing your decisions about all of that. It takes you to the root of the problem when a new trend emerges. It gives you ammunition when tackling performance inside the business and with your downstream providers. It's no good going to a supplier and saying, we don't think you're very good, unless you can say, well, we don't think you're very good at this, you're quite good at that. That's a much more constructive approach to dealing with it. But I suppose for me, and I think we're almost running out of time, that I would just finish by saying that I suppose in an industry not typically characterized by its fervent imagination, data allows you to create dynamic solutions which preempt the sort of emerging behaviors in the competitive credit services market. And that's really the important thing here. We need to keep ahead of innovations by the people who are costing you money, because that is what TP Pro does. It offers an antidote to a much more expensive alternative.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I think that's a good summary, James, of the importance of data. The one thing I did just want to talk about with data is the importance of rationalizing it. And I think this is probably most prominent when it comes into capture percentages. So for any of you that have procured a third-party intervention partner, what you'll tend to find is you get great variance in terms of the reported capture percentages that they get. That's often to do with the way that different businesses exclude stuff from those calculations. For us, we exclude nothing unless we don't have contact details ultimately, but others work in different ways. So for your benefit, if you've got two suppliers where one's telling you that they capture 70% and the other 50%, I don't expect that is a true delta. And actually, I think there's a good argument to say that the one reporting 50 is probably better. So just be very careful at looking at like-for-like comparisons in terms of those data, because the way that people rationalize them to make them make sense.
Well, a really good benchmark for that is what proportion of your AD non-fault opportunities does your credit hire provider convert?
Yeah.
If people are suggesting that their TP capture process converts at a higher level than credit hire, then I suggest that they're being quite selective in terms of what they're publishing to you.
It's a great point, James. Thank you. We got a question in around how do you make, what do you need to include in a text to make it COPLI compliant? Chloe, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are two important things. I'll caveat this with that I'm not a lawyer, but the two things that I think are important and that we that need to be included in order, and the courts, there's lots of guidance on this, in order for a third party to make an informed decision about being able to mitigate their costs and being able to make a cost-effective decision. The rate of the hire vehicle that you are able to supply them as an individual needs to be included so that they are able to accurately assess whether the cost of the claim. So if they've got an offer from organisation 1 who are providing a rate of £100 and organisation 2 who are providing a rate of £50 a day, they can go, well, actually, okay, well, clearly, if it was me and I'm spending my money, I want a most cost-effective solution. They've got a duty to mitigate, and therefore they can see those costs. So that's the first point. I think there's also some guidance around, inviting the third party to make contact and take advice from their insurer or their legal representative, if that's the case. But yeah, I mean, the character limit within the SMS is difficult. You could potentially, if you haven't got any other solution that you can embed within the text message to link to a COPLI, perhaps you could put it over 1 or 2, 3 messages potentially as another solution. But those are those.
A link to a letter, Chloe. You could have a link to a letter.
Yeah, and it's something embedded into your text message or SMS or your email that can link you to your original COPLI, and having then stored it in a central database for access could be another solution.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chloe. So just before we wrap up, but just in terms of summary, I think we've covered off the objectives. For me, again, and I said this at the start, I think this is one of the more overlooked elements of motor claims management. Certainly, if I consider the amount of time that gets put into management of AD spend or PI spend, and I think that there's more leakage in this area than any of those other areas, is my view. Is absolutely my view, that there is more leakage here than anywhere else. So I would encourage you guys to take it very, very seriously. Make sure that you're not just looking at cost, but you're looking at, not just looking at capture, but looking at downstream cost control and all the elements that we spoke about there, making sure you've got great access to data, and ultimately being able to feel very confident that you're getting about as good services as possible, either from your internal team or any external partner. So, Chloe, James, anything to add on top of that? Final thoughts? No.
No. I think I closed off just now. So
that's never happened from James. He's always.
I know. Sorry, I'm uncharacteristically running out of words.
So listen,
that is like you. But no, the ABI recently, released their latest data that 2024 costs are spiraling out of control. They're the record highest level. So cost control is key, but as well as ensuring that customer gets the right outcome. So there's obviously a fine balance, but customer and cost are the two things that sort of side by side that you need to ensure.
I think it's a great point as well. We went through that delta, that savings, that the cost of not capturing has gone up by about 80% since the start of COVID. So this has become more important than ever. That's an inflationary level that you haven't seen in other areas potentially. So it becomes so important. So listen, everyone, thanks for taking the time to hear from us today. I know some people will have questions that they don't necessarily want to put in the chat. You can always come directly to us. Chloe and I are on LinkedIn. James is allergic to social media, so it's not on there, but feel free to come.
Apparently I have a LinkedIn profile. So
you do somewhere. Okay, yeah. But feel free to drop us any questions. And equally, if you want to go through the MGAA, then we're more than happy to answer any questions that you want. And with that, we'll hand back.
Thank you so much, Gary, and to the Innovation Group, Chloe and James, for sharing your insights with our members today. And we hope our members have gained some valuable and practical takeaways from the session. As I mentioned before, if you haven't already, please take a moment to complete our feedback survey. The link is in the chat. This will be sent to you via email as well with the session recording in the next couple of weeks. Please stay informed about our upcoming events via the MGA website for the latest details. And as Gary said, we're happy to answer any further questions you have. But I'll leave it there and thank you all for joining us and have a great afternoon.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.